What's up, guys? This is Katherine Adjahoe, and I will be doing a JavaScript timer tutorial in this video. It's going to be beautiful with HTML and CSS styling, and you can put it in any of your project or website. And for the record, this is a beginner's video, so if you're new to JavaScript and you need a project, this is a cool project to dive in with me and do. So this is the demo timer that we're going to create. So as you see, countdown clock is here. You have your units, days, hours, minutes, and seconds. And this is a weekly timer, okay? Once the timer gets to 0, like all of these are 0, it's going to show a different display. So it's not going to display the clock anymore. What it's going to display is this bottom section right here where it says event is live, and there's a button to click to enter that live stream area. Okay, and we're going to do it all with JavaScript. All right, so let's begin. Hey guys, for your information, this you need to know before you dive in with me with the timer. Now, this is for beginners, and that's why I'm doing this in the video, because many videos that you see, you just watch somebody doing it, and as they go along, they'll just tell you really quick what the terminologies are. But for me, what I'm going to do is tell you to go ahead and research it on your own, okay? Because while I'm doing the timer, I will be saying these things, but it's going to be quick. So I've made a list of this stuff personally for you, my beginners, so that you can dive in on your own and get your own relationship with JavaScript. All right, so resources. Now, I already told you the languages are going to be JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, right? The source file, you can definitely get that on my my GitHub page, and the URL is right here, and it's also in the description below. The demo, you can see it in action on my website, and the link is also down below in the description. And references. So this reference right here that I have here, w3schools.com, I'm just saying, hey, if you're a beginner in JavaScript, go to this website, w3schools.com, and look up these terms that I have here, because it's going to give you a clearer understanding of what in the world I'm talking about. All right, because not many people are like familiar with the date object in JavaScript, and it functioned a little funny. So I would say take a little time and read up on these things, even if you just take, like, I don't know, 15 minutes to pause this video, read all of these things, and then come back to the video. All right, so that when I'm talking about it, you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. Also, the design of this timer, I got that influence from Net Ninja on YouTube. All right. Now, lastly, I want to tell you about the units of the date object. So JavaScript, when we talk about date in JavaScript, it's calculated in milliseconds from January 1st, 1970 at midnight, and in universal time. All right. That's important. And you have to remember that months count from 0 to 11. So 0 is January, and 11 is December. All right. So there's 4 ways to initiate a date. You have the new date object right there, and you could also, another way is to put in the milliseconds in there, or you could put a string in with the specific formats, and that's why you would need to go to W3 Schools, because it breaks that down for you. And there's, these ways right here are the ways, and you'll find it once you do your own research. This one is special because it automatically gives you the date in milliseconds, so the current date in milliseconds. So that's another way of getting your date. All right, so this one spits it out as UTC format, so in a way that humans can read. This one is just a big number. All right. Also, we need to keep in mind how many milliseconds equal a second, how many seconds equal a minute. That's important because that's what's going to generate the countdown. All right. And so read these things in your time. Also, let me just explain that the 24 hours UTC time, if you want to change it to Central US Daylight Time, you want to subtract 12 hours from that. All right. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, usually the time goes from midnight all the way to noon, and then after noon it's different. So you have like 13, 14, 15. So 13 is 1 o'clock, and that's the UTC time. But if you want a regular standard time, like what we use in the US, you want to subtract 12 hours from that time. So if it's 13 hours, you subtract 12 and you get 1 o'clock, right? So 1300 is 1 o'clock for us, all right, in CDT time, which is Central US Daylight Time. All right, so let's dive in. All right, so let's get our hands dirty. So I created 3 files. So I created a folder, and then I made 3 files. One file called index.html. You could call it whatever you want. Timer.css and timer.js. Now I went ahead and populated the timer.css already because I will not be covering styling the timer in this tutorial. Plus you can get it from my source file. All right, so I just plugged in everything I needed for the CSS file already. Now let's get back to the index.html. Let's go ahead and do our declaration. So we're not going to be doc type, oops, I'm spelling things wrong, doc type HTML, right? And our HTML tag, and then yeah, let's just go ahead and put in our head and title, right? Our title, and just basic. Let's just say JavaScript Timer, right? So we named our project, and let's just you know what, let's link our style sheet, which is the timer.css, to this page. So we're gonna create a link, and it's gonna be style sheet, oops, style sheet. What am I doing? And type text CSS. All right, and let's link it. So it's gonna be timer.css because it's in the same folder. And let's close out. All right, that's all we need in the head for this tutorial. All right, now let's go to our body tag real quick. Let's close it out so we don't forget to close it out, and let's close out our HTML tag. Inside the body, we're just going to create 3 divs. All right, so the first div is going to be the container for the whole timer / button. So we're going to put a class on there, and we're going to say display. So this is the screen that we're going to see, right? Whatever's in this is what we're going to see on the screen. And let's close it out so we don't forget. And then we're going to create the div that holds the clock. So I'm going to go ahead and put an ID on here called clock, as well as a class. And you'll know this, you'll know why I did this later on. So I put a class called clock. All right, and let's go ahead and close that out so we don't forget. Then we're gonna put a header. Let's use the header tag, and we're just gonna, let's add a class to that. So these classes are already pre-made, so that's why I already know what the names are, because I already put it into the style sheet. But you could go along with this if you're taking my source code and using it. You can go ahead and populate your CSS aspect and then do this with me as well. All right, so let's call it live event starts in so we're not calling it, we're just putting that header there. So we're telling people why the clock is counting down. Div, another div we're creating, and that is going to be I think numbers. Yeah, so this div is where the JavaScript is going to inject the numbers, right? So our class, and this one is going to be days, right? And then we're just going to go ahead and copy this and paste it 3 more times, right? And just change out the class name. So that's days. The next thing is going to be hours. Oops, hours. Then we have minutes. And we have seconds, right? So this is where the JavaScript is going to inject the numbers onto the screen, all right? And we didn't close this out, so let's go ahead and close that div out. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is the units, the labels that we have underneath the numbers, right? So div ID and units. And then we're just going to span that, days. We're gonna put a span on it. Let's also copy this and paste it 3 times for time's sake, right? And then close our div out, and then go back up here. Hours, right? Minutes, seconds, right? All right. Then after that, so those are the 2 divs that's going to be in the clock div. So let's close that out. And I don't want to distract you guys. So this div tag, this closing div tag is for the clock. So this is basically what is closing, right? So underneath that div, we're going to do the div that holds the button in there that's going to allow people to enter the live stream area. All right. So div ID equals door. Class. This one we're going to go ahead. Well, before we put the hide on there, I'm going to leave it open so you can see. And if you can see already the preview, it's going well. So right now there's no numbers in there, so that's why it looks like this, right? So let's go ahead and put this other div in here. Let me just close it out so I don't forget to close it out. That happens. All right, so let's put a header tag in here, just like we did up there, and let's call this one event title, right? Let's just say event is live. All right, for this video. Let's put a p tag, paragraph tag, and let's call it, I don't know, action caption, right? And you could say whatever you want. Click the button below to enter stream, right? Click the button below to enter live stream. All right, and last but not least, we're gonna do our button. So our button, add a class to it, and we're gonna call it call to action button. Type, it is a button, And on click, we're going to add a function, right? Because this is what's going to inject or cause the window to change or go to the URL that your live stream is taking place. So live stream, I already created this function, but I'll go over it as the video continues, so don't worry about it. Just write live stream like how I have it. Enter live stream. And let's close that off. All right, so anytime a person clicks on the button, this function right here is going to run. So we didn't create the function yet, but this is the function that's going to run. And basically what that function is going to do is change your page to the page where the live stream is, all right, in your browser. All right, so I think we are done for the most part. Let's take a look at what we've created so far. All right, guys, so this is what we have in the screen. We created both our views that we want to have, and so let's go ahead and create the JavaScript. All right. So before we get to our JavaScript page to begin typing, we need to connect it to our index.html page. So our index.html, right above the body tag, we're just going to put a script in, a script tag in for our JS file. So source equals timer.js, right? Oh. Right. And let's close it off. All right, so we're ready to go. All right, so in our timer.js, I'm going to pre-fill this with some variables that I created already. All right, guys, so we have a few variables here, and let's just go over it really quick. So we have let countdown. So the countdown variable is what's going to control the setInterval function, and I'll get into that further on in the video. So just know that it controls the setInterval function for now. The event in session, that is going to basically control the switching in and out of the clock or the button. All right. And this, the clock, document.getElementById, like I said in the earlier portion of this video, that's the terminology that you have to look up. But basically what it does is control the element in the HTML page that has that has this clock ID on it. All right, so if we go over to our index.html page, wow, I can't talk today. We'll see that the clock ID, this right here, this portion right here, is what allows the JavaScript to control everything within this div. Okay, so not necessarily control, but be able to interact with it. All right, the next thing is the live stream button. All right, so this is also the same thing as clock. It controls the div that has the door ID onto it. I call it a door because, you know, you're giving them access to somewhere. So this is the div over here that controls this ID right here is what controls it, right? Control this whole div that we have set up at the bottom, right? So the next things are basically the div elements, the div elements, or the elements in the HTML file that has those class names. So days, hours, minutes, that's how we're going to inject the information into here, right? And this span right here represents all of these that you see here, these colors. Nice colors, by the way. All right, so, and I used document.querySelector all right, to get access to those. I could use element get element by ID as well, but then I would have to turn it into IDs. But I use class because I can use it in the CSS as well, all right, and allow the JavaScript to control the CSS. So that's why we did that. All right, so moving on. All right, so the next thing we want to do here is add a few more lines so I can explain it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right, so the first line, let me just take off this comment so we can see with more clarity. All right, so this line right here that I just added, this is how we initiate the timer with this date that we're gonna pass in, right? So as I told you in the beginning of this video that there's different ways to, you know, get the date. Well, here it is. This is the one I'm using where I pass in the year, the month, and remember this is February because months start from 0 to 11, right? And the day, I made this, so this is February 19th right here at 11:30 a.m. So this is the date that's being passed in, and what getTime function does is automatically convert this into milliseconds for me. All right, so I just added it on so that I can get the start date in milliseconds immediately. And another thing what you need to know is if your event say has passed and you want to have a future date, you go ahead and plug that future date in here as well. So remember what I said about the UTC and the CDT time. This 11, if I wanted this to be at 11:30 p.m., this 11 would have to turn into 22. I mean 23. Sorry. But for this purpose, we're just going to do 11 a.m. So 11:30 a.m. Right? This 30 represents the minutes, and this represents the seconds. All right. Now the next line, this line right here, it is a conditional statement, and basically what it says is if start date is greater than Date.now, and again this represents the current time. So if start date, right, is greater than Date.now, we want to send start date to the timer function. So that's why we pass start date as a parameter in the timer function, and we're going to get to the function soon. Or else we want to pass the start date as a parameter in the calculate future date function. All right, so this basically tells us, okay, where the start date is going to go. So for instance, if our start date for our event didn't come yet, yeah, sure, we want to go and plug it into here, right? We want to just go straight to the timer. But if our start date passed already, then we want to go and calculate a new date from this date, right? So this calculator is going to add dates onto what we plugged in, the past event, right, to generate a new date in the future. Okay, cool. All right, so our first function is going to be the we're going to create the calculator. So we're going to calculate future date function first, just in case we'll need that first. All right, so function 1, before we dive into the code, we want to have a good understanding about it. You could fast forward this if you're not a beginner. All right, so future date calculated. So this function is going to take a number in as a parameter right here, as you see, date to change, and then it's going to format that date in a way where we can adjust it. Okay, so we're going to plug it back into the new date function, right? That number that we passed as a parameter, we're going to put it in here, and we're going to get a new number. So we pass that new number into this variable called new date. Then it says we're going to change the number into a date format. So we just did that, and then create a new date, right? So we're going to then add 7 days onto that new date that we just got, because this is a weekly timer. And so if you have an event that goes like every day, you're going to put 1 here instead of 7, right? Or every 3 days is going to be 3 instead of 7. So once we get that new date adjusted, we're going to pass it into the timer function. All right, so let's go ahead and make our first function the future date calculated function. All right, guys, so I already populated the first function that we talked about, calculate future date. I'm just going to explain it one more time. So once we pass the start date into the function as a parameter, that's what this represents, date to change. So start date is going to be here. We're going to pass it here so that it can convert into a format, date format that can be adjusted. All right. So the new date now, we're going to take it and we're going to get the date from it. Right. So this is what this new date dot does. New date dot get date. Basically get the date from the actual date, or the day, I should say, from the actual date. And we are adding 7 days onto that that number that we got. Okay, and then we're going to set it to that new date that we just created. So we added 7 days onto the date. So if it was 19, that we'll get from here, right? If it was 19 as the day, we're gonna add 7 to that, which will probably be like 26. So the date will be February 26, 2017, blah blah blah, in milliseconds, right here, right? And then we're gonna pass it to the timer function. So let's hit save and go to function number 2, which is the timer function. So function number 2 is going to determine how much time is left. So it's going to take a date in as a parameter, right? So that's the new date we had calculated in function 1. And we're gonna find the distance between the future date and current date. And that's what we do right here. So we snag the current date using this Date.now. We pass it into this variable, and then we subtract what we passed in as the parameter, which is the date we calculated, and we find the difference and we place it into this variable right here, difference in time. So this is the distance between the future date and the current date. Okay, and then we're gonna pass the distance to time left, the time left function right here. But before we do that, we also have some conditions. We have to check and see if the timer is at 0. So if there's 0 time remaining, which means that the event is now, we're going to stop the timer, right? So the set interval, I spoke about that earlier, what countdown was. So countdown controlled the set interval, and at the end of this video I'll explain what set interval is. But basically what it does is just run this entire function in here every second. Okay, so if the difference is 0, we're going to stop it, we're going to hide the clock, okay, and then we're going to show the button. All right. And while we're doing that, we're going to hold off bringing back the clock on to the screen for 2 hours. So this number right here is a big number, I know, but it represents 2 hours. So 7,200,000 milliseconds is 2 hours, right? So it's going to hold it for 2 hours. And if you notice, this is service in session, but the thing that we're doing says event in session. This controls the setTimeout function, right? And later on in the video, I'll break that down as well. So basically what it means is that hold off for 2 hours, then come back and do this. So pause for 2 hours, and then come back and hide the button and show the clock. And in the meantime, send this date that we passed in here initially back to the calculator to calculate another date in the future. All right. So that's what that does. So if it's 0, this is what we're going to do. But if it's not 0, we're just going to send the difference into the time left function, right? And again, this function is going to be done every second. All right. So let's go into function number 2 in the code area. All right, guys. So the function number 2 is timer function. So this is the timer function, and we are going to pass a date into it as a parameter. And then the countdown setInterval function is going to get the current date and time, right? And put it in milliseconds into this variable. And then we're going to take that date that we passed in after we just calculated it down here and subtract it from the current date so we can get the distance between the two dates, right? Once we get that distance, we're going to do a check to make sure that that distance is not 0. And if it's not 0, we're going to pass it to the time left function, which is function number 3. But if it is 0, we want to go ahead and stop the countdown, right? We want to hide the clock. So hide the clock in this line right here, the clock div. And then we want to show the button that leads to the live stream of the event. And then right here, this is the setTimeout function. So the event in section. So while the event is in session, we're going to hold off on the countdown for 2 hours, right here. So that's what that 7,200,000 represents, 2 hours in milliseconds. So the event that I created this for, it lasts about 2 hours, right? So once the 2 hours pass, we want to go in here and hide the button, send that date that we had, that we initially started the timer with, back to the calculator and show the clock again, right? And basically we're just going to generate a new date from that date, all right? 7 days in the future. So now we're going to do the time left function, which is going to spit out the information into these blocks right here on the screen. Okay, so I know everybody's excited. They want to get it working right away. This next function is going to be the one that makes it work. All right, so let's head over to function number 3. So function number 3, here is the function that's going to do the magic before our eyes. So it's going to convert the time and then display it, right? So it's going to take a date in milliseconds in right here. And it's going to calculate how many days, hours, minutes, and seconds is left. And that is the math that I have here. And again, you can go to W3 School and check out what Math.floor is. So basically, we just want a whole number. We don't want any remainder hanging on into these numbers, because then, you know, the human brain is going to be like, and we don't want that. All right, so that's what we're doing here. We're breaking them down into their different units, that number down into different units, right? And then after that, we're going to write a conditional. So, you know, the numbers that are from 0 to like 9, they don't have a 0 in front of them, so we want it to display nicely, so we're going to put a 0 in front of it. So that's what this basically does. So it just says if, so this question mark is if, so if days is less than 10, so if that number is less than 10, we want to go ahead and put a 0 there, right? And then the number, so a 0 and then the number, so we're putting the 0 in front of the number. else, that's what these the colon is, do nothing, right? So do nothing and just spit the number out. So that's what we do for all of them. Okay, after we have done that, we're going to come down here and we're going to inject it into the HTML. So that's what this does. We pass these variables into the different span tags that we have. All right, so text content, you want to research that in W3 schools as well. So let's get over to our code. All right, so function number 3, I already populated it. So we have our calculator at the bottom function. We have our timer above the time left function, which is what we're doing right now, the third function right here, right? All right, so let me just give that space so for clarity. All right, so right here is the time left function, which is the third function and last function that we're going to deal with in order to make the timer work. All right, so these right here is the calculations. This is what gives us the units that we need, the days, the hours, the minutes, and the seconds, right? And then we come down here and we put it in a format that we would like to see it, right? And then we inject it into the HTML right here. All right, so you take your time and, you know, do the code, because like I said, I have the source file, so you could just copy and paste as I'm talking, and there you are. It's going to be in the page. So let's take a look at it. Let's save this first, and let's go over here and hit refresh, right? And so it starts to work. And right now we have this here because we didn't put the hide class onto anything, but at least we know that our timer works. Okay, now let's go back and do the last function. So the last function, we don't have to really discuss it. The last function is just the function that we need in order to reroute the user to the live stream once they click on the button. So I'm just going to put it at the end of this document right here, right, this JS file. So so basically what it is, we don't accept any parameters. It's just a function that's called from the HTML. So once they click on the button, this button right here, this function will run, and this function is basically saying in your browser window, I want you to go here to this address. All right, so you could put your own address in here to personalize your project. All right, so let's go over here and hit refresh and have my console open. So our timer works. So let's go over here. Oh, we didn't try our button. Let's try our button. So hit button, and it changes the screen. Okay, it changes the screen to wherever your live stream is. All right, so we know our button works. So let's go over back to our HTML and add our hide button. So we want to hide the button first, right? We want to hide the button first. So you see it immediately disappears because we already populated the CSS. And I'm not sure, let's save that. I'm not sure if I showed you, but in the CSS, the hide class, all it does is just put display to none, right? All it does is just put display to none, and that's what makes the button disappear, right? So if we remove hide from class, it comes back, right? But if we add it, it disappears, right? And that is what's happening in here. So when we put the hide class on, it makes the clock disappear. Or if we put it on to the live stream, it makes that disappear. All right. All right, guys, so we created the timer, so let's see it in action. So right now, we don't want to sit here and wait 6 days before we see that our timer works, right? We know that the clock works, but we also want to make sure that it does what it needs to do after you know, it becomes 0, right? So let's go in here and manipulate this number real quick. So today is the 20th. So let's put 20 for the date, and the time is 9:11. So we're gonna say 09, and let's see if we could catch it for 12 seconds, right before it turns. I mean 12 minutes. It's 9:11 right now. So let's hit save and go over here and refresh, and let's wait 3 seconds. It changes, so it works. Event is live, and it will hold it here for about 2 hours. But let's go over here and change it to 1 second, right? So let's make this 1,000 milliseconds and hit save. So this is the set timer, right? This is the set timer function that we spoke about, where it will hold the button for a certain period of time on the page. And let's change this, since the 12 is already passed. 12 minutes is already passed. Let's make it 13. Let's see if we could catch 13 minutes. So let's hit refresh, and it's counting down. We have 18 seconds. 18 seconds. 2, 1. Bam. See, it switches back because we had it there for 1 second, right? So now you know how to do this. So I'm just gonna change mine back to 2 hours. I'm just going to break down the set interval really quick. So set interval and set timeout real quick, because this is what's going to help you to make your timer. So set interval explained. So basically what this function does is it repeats a function continuously, right? So everything within the function, it's going to run that every second, because we have 1,000 milliseconds right here. So you can put any number here and it's going to run it every, you know, period of time, right? So that's what set interval is. Now set timeout, what set timeout does is it executes a function after a specific time. So basically it's like, wait for this amount of time, then do everything inside of here. All right, so that's what set timeout does. So you could put a certain time here. So if you wanted to wait like 2 minutes and then do this, then it'll wait 2 minutes and then do this. All right, so play around with it and, you know, get used to it. All right, so I'm gonna leave you guys to be creative. Go ahead and be creative with yours. Here are just a few tips on how to customize my code. So if you're making your own timer, these are the parts that you want to focus on changing. So again, the start date, that is what you want to change to fit your needs. So if your event starts in the future, you know, you put the future date there. Or if you want to, you know, check it out and make sure it works, you can put a past date there. Whatever you want to do, it will still work, right? So after that, you want to also make sure that the time frame that you want the set timeout to be for before the button comes on the screen, you want to change that number. So it changed the time, so you could change the time the div should hide for. Sorry. And the other aspect that you want to change is how many days in the future do you want to create that date for. So if your event is like 5 days away, you want to add 5 days, right? So this is a weekly timer, so every week this event goes on for me. So that's why I have 7 there. But if you have a daily event, you just switch that to 1. Say every 3 days, you just switch that to 3, right? So make sure that you adjust this date for your preference. As well as that button goes somewhere, so you want to switch out my URL for your URL. Okay, that's about it when it comes on to you customizing the timer. Okay, All right, guys, so that's the end of this video. This is Katherine Adjahoe. Again, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Share your timer with me. Leave a comment with a link to your JavaScript timer. And visit my website at kdesignswild.com/blog. I have other videos on there that can help you. All right, take care until next time.